Okay, welcome to the very first episode of The Real Deal. Dane Atherton's my name. Joining me, my co-host, business partner, Rob Forde, a.k.a. Robert Ledward Coast Forde.
Thanks for putting that out there. That's great.
That is your legal name?
It is my legal name.
Robbie, here we are. There's been a lot of chat about this with us. We've been threatening to do a podcast.
Yep.
We finally got there, and I shared this with you before, but this is what it came down to for me. Having the courage to actually start.
Yes.
And I saw this, and I swear it was for me. You know, when you see a post sometimes, you think that's actually there for me.
No coincidence at all.
Your first workout will be bad. Your first podcast will be bad. Your first speech will be bad. Your first video will be bad. Your first anything will be bad. But you can't make your 100th without making your first, so put your ego aside and start. Now, I'm managing expectations here.
Yeah, I think you are. You certainly are, which is good. But hey, having a go.
Robbie, why does the world need another podcast? We talked about that. We resisted it. But we feel compelled to start one, don't we? Why is that?
I think probably an observation and having a look around it, you know, a number of the podcasts are out there and, you know, whether we actually need another podcast or whether it's something, I think for the industry, I think there's definitely an opportunity or a gap to actually, you know, make some observations and have a look. And I think particularly, you know, I think we probably bring a perspective that you might not, you know, it might be unique to some. You know, it's a relatively big business that we're a part of, and you know, you've been in the industry with different groups for a long time, as have I, in different countries and things. So I think, you know, hopefully we can, you know, bring some insights.
I think you're being very politically correct with that answer.
Maybe. What do you think?
Well, you know, I think, why does the world need another podcast? The world doesn't, but I strongly believe the real estate industry does.
Yeah.
And we talk about that quite regularly because, I mean, you only have to look at, you know, there's education masquerading, or there's, I should say, marketing masquerading as education.
Yeah.
There's people standing in front of Lambos.
Yeah.
You know, being the industry doyens, giving advice. And that just doesn't sit right for me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mistruths. There's a lot of, we're in this time in our industry where I think real, good, quality human beings are letting the noise come to the surface, and they're not actually standing up and setting example for that next generation. And that's what I hope we can do with our podcast, The Real Deal, is actually really reveal some of the hidden industry stars that aren't going to stand and beat their chest.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think when you actually have a look, a lot of the people that are actually doing the business are probably the least vocal or visible on social. So it is funny time. That's probably not just in real estate, but it's in general.
And they're the people that I aspire to be like, the humble.
Yeah, correct.
I'll give you an example. I had a coffee with a guy yesterday, and I'm going to name names. I am going to be...
You're out there, hard-hitting truths.
A gentleman by the name of Dane McVeigh.
Yep. Who
is a seasoned veteran. Not many people outside of the commercial space. I mean, Dan McVeigh, to give you an example, I think he's easily one of the best real estate practitioners in the country. He sold the Sheraton Mirage 4 times. I just met with him yesterday for a coffee, and he just closed a deal in Sydney for $600 million, a hotel. Works with his sons. And what struck me is here's a guy that you'll never see, you know, on the speaking circuit. He's not selling, you know, PDFs or memberships.
And I know you've got some opinions about those.
Yeah, of course. But he's a guy that when you actually sit down and ask him practical advice, I mean, absolute pearls of wisdom. A couple of things he said to me yesterday. The first thing is he's unashamedly a vendor agent.
Yep.
So he is unashamedly there to get the premium price for the seller, which easier said than done, but that translates to going and getting extra money, even when the deal's done, which is so simple, but so many people just are transactional. The other thing he said is to make 10 phone calls per week to new people, new clients who you've never met that actually own a piece of real estate that you want to list one day. Again, simple advice, but coming from a guy that, you know, last fee was $3 million commission, one deal. I just find it amazing, and that they're the kind of people that we want to bring to you.
But it's almost like there's more. I don't know. There's more interest, or you can create more hype around making something more difficult than it is. Because realistically, the industry that we're in, you know, it isn't particularly well. It's hard, but it's not like there's anything new or revolutionary. It's actually just doing the mundane work that actually gets the job done.
Absolutely, and to me, it's also about being a good human being.
Yeah, correct.
I always think of Warren Buffett and Charlie, his partner, and I'm a big fan of the way that they actually. I remember hearing him say words to the effect of, if fraudsters knew how profitable being a good human being and having a great reputation
so true
would actually be, they'd actually quit fraud tomorrow.
Yeah,
and I think our industry is well-meaning in the sense that it's closely aligned with the self-development industry. Yeah. So there's a lot of people go to ARIC, come back the next day, put the stop on prospecting signal on their office, leave me alone, well-meaning, and then they just simply get distracted away.
Yeah.
And I think it's also got to do with actually really enjoying the job and going towards the clients.
Yeah.
And delivering a great result. So, Robbie, let me ask you the first hard-hitting question, broad question of our discussion. Where's the industry at? Like, let's take the state of the nation of where the industry is at right now. Where do you think we're at as an industry?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, you have a look at the industry, and to know where it is now, you have a look back at, where it's
history
sort of come from.
Let's take a journey back. So
probably, when I got in, it would have been, 15 odd years ago, and it was kind of, not the tail end, but you'd gone through sort of the 80s and 90s of, I think, franchising kind of exploding onto the scene. And that was when I came in the
80s. Yeah. So the Ray Whites, the Hookers.
Yeah, the big brands.
The big brands. That's true. I remember that too. The 80s was just big brands.
Yeah.
And franchise groups. And you could argue that franchise groups and big brands through network and technology and having points of difference.
They offered huge amounts, to go to a brand, to actually have a brand for one. Like creating a brand was, I go back even before that. The old man, when he started up Mark Forde
Shout out to Mark.
Real Estate. Yeah, hey old fella. But Mark Forde Livestock Real Estate. I remember when he was getting the signs done on the outside, and it was a sign writer painting it.
Yeah.
And you just think, you go to a brand because the expertise in marketing, technology, CRM, all of those things were, relatively new concepts. So it was pretty cutting edge to be part of that.
Yeah.
And they really, I believe, captured the way of actually, it's an individual industry in terms of you've got to do the work on your own and you're out there doing it. But that sort of, connection piece was something that, people really bought into, and for good reason. So that was probably the 80s, 90s. And then, franchising, I don't know where the gap is after that. I'm going
to say, for me, when I joined the industry, late 90s.
Yeah.
I started with a boutique agency, Lambert Smolin.
Yes.
And what was interesting as a brand new person in the industry at, say, 19 years old, I'm going to call the late 90s, early 2000s the rise of the strong independent.
Yeah, you're
And I'm going to
right.
say McGrath's, as a young guy getting in the industry, John McGrath's was...
They were huge.
They were the holy grail.
They were trendsetters. They were ahead of the time.
They were absolutely. Yeah. And great company still.
Yeah.
But when I remember going to Sydney as a 21-year-old, watching them do auctions, looking at their marketing, and they were so far ahead.
Yeah, they were.
They really were. And still very much are a great company, don't get me wrong, but obviously, like anything, as we've noticed in our business, you start nailing parts of your business and setting a standard, whether it's people nurture or great taking client events and team events to a whole new level and filming them and putting them on social. All of a sudden, everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
They would have had that same experience where the marketing standard caught up very quickly.
Yeah.
So that was sort of late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Then you had these other players arrive into the market.
Yeah.
Like Remax.
Yes.
More recently, EXP. You've got these...
EXP, even in the US, looking over, Compass, there's a few of those names over there. But it's funny, I reckon, like, if you have a look, it was almost, 5-10 years ago? There was almost a lot of talk around, the disruption. Like, every prop tech group coming into the industry was like, well, how do we disrupt this? The day of the agent maybe isn't as relevant as it was.
Well, that's right.
And they were trying to almost
go back to the 2000s where you had these models that were very much higher commissions, Remax, that challenged Whites. I know Whites lost people to a lot of people, and I remember speaking to Brian White, and he said to me that was one of the best things that ever happened to his company because it made them better.
Yeah,
it was a big challenge.
Yeah.
But really, that was sort of 2000s. And then, you're right, we had this period, like 5-10 years ago, where people were worried about realestate.com.
Yeah.
This disruption.
Yep.
Disruption was a word back then you heard a lot. Yeah. You don't hear it as much now.
No, you don't.
And what was interesting is that back then there was this idea that the agent was vulnerable.
Yeah, big time. And that's where everything was. What if we could, you know, even inside bigger groups, the conversation was around how can we, and prop tech particularly, how can we cut out the agent?
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can go direct now to the client or a bigger brand, or how can that actually work to
Great example of that, I would say Purple Bricks arriving in Australia. Not that they cut the agent out, but they diminished the value of an agent.
Yeah.
Lower commissions, big brand, top line marketing.
Almost just off the shelf, nothing bespoke. It was kind of just, thought it would just be set and forget, nice and easy. And
which brings us to now.
Yeah.
And you'd have to say that it's pretty much accepted within anyone designing a model now that the agent isn't going anywhere.
I would say probably now agent's more relevant than ever, really, because
Absolutely.
I think people have realised that it's fundamental to the deal. Like you cannot replicate what an agent does. It just can't happen.
And when you think about it as an industry, this idea that we can just, top line market, get an inquiry, send anyone out, get a property sold, it's a highly specialised, localised profession where if I own a property in my marketplace, I want to know that I'm dealing with the person who knows the market, has the buyers, knows the market, and can get me a premium.
Yeah, and it's almost, I reckon, going to come more relevant now. Like even hearing what some of the things are going on with AI, and you look at Chat GPT and all these things that are happening, which are, I don't know, the point that you said about the real humans and why that's going to be important. I almost think there's all these avenues now to make things easier by almost not doing the work. And it's even one of the big trends at the moment in the US is, you've got Zillow, these players pumping out leads. Everything's about these leads people get. So people are fighting over these leads, yet they're forgetting about the real relationship that they need to try and create with the person and the human being behind it. And I almost think with where things are going with AI, if you just go all into that, you're going to miss the point of what real great agents are actually doing that's, going to continue to make them great.
AI is so fascinating, and even this propensity to sell concept. And while we're talking about that, I just find it hard to get my head around how, and we have a system in our business, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically got to do with propensity to sell.
Yeah.
And there's some great products out there. But when you think about it, it's your own data that then goes into a formula. Has touch points, comes back to you with a list of people that are potentially more likely to sell.
Yeah.
Great thing from the agent's perspective is it gives them someone to call.
Yeah.
But if someone's on your database, my question is, how do you need an external party to tell you who to call? I mean, I know that there's trigger points.
Yeah.
But we should be having a business that goes much more in depth. And I think what this stuff exposes is the lack of depth of relationship.
Yeah.
Because if you had the depth of relationship, you don't necessarily need AI to tell you who in the marketplace to call. Now, that's in an ideal world. I'm not saying it's not a great tool.
And this almost goes back to something we were talking about the other day, and it's almost now where in the age of the agent, it's about going pro and those that are actually going all in. And it's kind of the old school that are, I've got the relationship, I've been doing this 20 years, I'll get that business, almost like an expectation that it's going to come. But the new school that are in there actually working hard, doing the calls, being relevant, being in front of people, giving information, it's very hard to compete unless you're actually all in. So I think that's going to be a big thing.
Oh, and look, no doubt that comment topic's going to come up in other episodes. Yeah. But you could really drill down on that whole idea of semi-pro
versus actually going pro.
And I just picture a 1985 rugby league player in the dressing room with a cigarette in his mouth versus a 2023 player who's got ice baths, nutritionalist, strength and conditioning, mental coach. And if you've watched that Quarterback, Netflix, you look at those guys and you see the level of attention and care they have in getting themselves, their body, their mind right.
Yeah.
That's pro.
And that's what the best agents are doing now.
Absolutely. And that's what you're competing against now. There's so much at stake in our industry. There's so much market share. There's so much business to be done that I think our business now has to step up.
Yeah,
all of us do. And when I say our business, I say the industry needs to step up.
And so, if we're talking about the age of the agent, I mean, you've seen more trends than I. But what do you think, is actually best for the agent in this, era that we're in as an industry?
It's a great question. And I think both you and I want to be totally committed to being completely brutally truthful about our honest opinion about this, because we're not, we're going to try our absolute hardest not to push our barrow. Of course, we're going to say, join our business, but let's not be those guys, right? Let's actually be really objective about this. Yeah. I mean, I look at it this way. If my brother or my, relative was getting into the industry and they were at stage 1 or stage 5 or stage 10 of a business, what would I recommend? What's best for them? So that's what I'm going to try and answer that question, and I'd like you to do the same. Answer that question coming from that perspective. So what's interesting about that? What's best for the agent? Well, the answer to that is it depends on the agent. Yeah. Because there are, and I think what we're alluding to there is we've seen this rise of do your own brand, for example. That's one, that model. Yep. And
a lot of that came back. It's almost from the US with your EXPs, your compasses. There's different ways that sort of has been pushing, and I think you're right. It's starting to filter through in Australia more so now.
Absolutely, and so we'll talk about that. Yep. But I think it's about making sure that the environment that you're in, and depending on the stage that you're at in your career, and the support, and you actually feel aligned with the company and the leadership and the brand, and really how you're representing that company. That's important, and it's not necessarily just about split. Yeah, split's important, but I think it's about you making sure that you're actually proud of where you work. Yeah, because that shows to a client. Yeah. The other thing is what's best for the agent. Well, I'd answer it like this: what gives them the competitive advantage at a listing presentation? What helps them list more property? What helps them grow their business? What support do they have? Now, let's talk about this be your own brand, because one of the things that I've observed and probably been a bit disappointed, not so much myself, we're doing this, but other leaders in the industry, is that there's been a lot of bashing of franchise groups and a lot of bashing of big businesses where, and I see the quote, you're building someone else's brand as if that's evil. Yeah. The first thing about that is I'd say is, well, brands aren't worth anything in real estate. So by you building someone else's brand, I mean, we're Harcourts Coastal. We're part of the franchise group. We don't own the brand. Yeah. We can't bank that. Yes. So we rent the brand effectively. And do we sit around and, discuss that and keep us up at night? No, because the brand part of it is not a saleable commodity. Yeah. So that's the thing I'd challenge people like that and say, well, that's not actually a fair criticism, because no one's sitting back benefiting from that. Yeah. If you're building someone else's brand and then someone benefits from that, I'd argue there's not much benefit. For sure. Because as you know, in our business, the agent owns data. Yep. And the agent can pick up their business, move anywhere they want tomorrow, and we don't touch their data. Yep. So really, you look at it from that perspective, what advantage does it give? Now, I think there's a certain group of agents out there that will actually benefit from that because they want the perceived freedom, they want their name on the door, they place value in that, and they don't necessarily want a team, supportive, cultural environment. They don't get value from that, and that is absolutely fine. And there's people, one in particular that's left our company, and we would say perfectly suited for that model. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts, Rob? Because I don't necessarily. I think it's from a recruiting perspective. Yeah. If I had that opportunity to go and recruit and say be your own brand, I think that would be an easy tick. Yeah. But then, would I want a person? I mean, if I look at the top 50, 100 agents in the country, I don't think that model's appealing to them. Yeah.
Well, I might bring a perspective. When I was over, in the US and seeing when Compass came in, there was the amount of hype that went around this brand.
For those of you people that don't know, tell us a bit about Compass.
So Compass was a private equity funded business over in the US. They went over there and they essentially bought market share. So they were offering, huge splits, big incentives for agents to join, and essentially you got your own brand or team to work under Compass. And there was a heap of media about it because they were smart. They went and targeted top agents in the industry, and they got a lot of them, and it built momentum. one of the things that I, speaking with people still over there now, actually having a chat with Benny Brady this morning, but it's very interesting that the brand now, in terms of it's created confusion in the marketplace, and not to say that that's not right, but what's happened, instead of having this business that a seller knows, understands, and has sort of trusting, because brands do create a level of trust, I think.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're selling someone's house, it's all well and good until something goes wrong, or where the resource behind, or what's sort of going on. So a lot of these agents have gone out and been brands within that brand, which is fine. But it is now creating a lot of confusion in the marketplace where people aren't sort of sure what that is.
Yeah.
Not saying that that's a bad thing for the individual.
Well, the individual agent would argue that doesn't matter to me anyway, as long as I'm strong in that market, which is an element of truth about. But
correct.
I think if you actually go back behind the curtain and ask sellers, I think
that's
there is value. I think there is perceived value in being part of the team.
Yeah.
I think if you put a strong individual agent that's on their own up against a strong agent that's part of a team, I think if it comes down to it, I'm going to gravitate towards someone who's got a team behind them. Even if I don't necessarily have buyers from that team or get a direct benefit, I'm going to feel safer for whatever reason.
But I think as well, like the whole sort of rhetoric or narrative around, if you're doing a certain level of business, then you should be out doing your thing. And I think the model that we saw probably, decade ago, was that was the natural progression.
That's right.
You're a great agent. You got to a certain level, and then you went out and did your own thing, and you got a few agents, and then they went out and did their own thing, and there was a lot more sort of offices, more spread probably.
I'd go as far as to say if you break it down, that's right. That's and to be honest, franchise groups have a lot to answer for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they would take the top performing office out
and
of
they'll
the
have
business,
another territory away they
have
go.
a leadership pathway,
and
say, hey, your next step is to go and open an office. And of course, my favourite analogy of that is the DJ buying the nightclub. And when I say that, I'm conscious that people think, oh, that's okay for you because you've got a business. But nightclub ownership and being a DJ. Two totally different things. And you've got to work out what you want.
And that's what I think. Like, I think if an agent's got to a level where they actually want to drive and build and grow a big business, that's a very different decision to go and opening a shop and having, 2 or 3 people. And because I think the biggest, if you're looking at what's really good for the agent, if you're going out there to do your own thing, but you only want to do your own sales, you build your own team, then going out on your own without sort of leadership support, doing it alone, I don't know. It might be good for some, but to me, I look at our best people, and even probably, like you said, the best in the industry. I don't know, there's something about the connection of not doing it alone. And I think, I don't know, it can be a lonely, tough
there is
industry.
Such thing as a leadership premium.
Yeah,
I think it's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the people who are in our business, I'd say all people, but are varying different, they use us and bring us in at different levels.
Yeah.
The people at the higher end of the GCI spectrum probably use us more than anyone.
Yeah.
Fair to say. Because they value that sounding board leadership, deal support, keep me on track, there to help me, got your back. There's a lot of value in that. But let's go back a step. There's a difference between a real estate practice, call that a barrister that does their own fees, it plugs into a law firm.
Yep.
And that's like the typical high-producing agent that wants to do their own brand.
Yeah.
Then you've got a real estate business, which is a proper business.
Yep.
The problem is the new models that are emerging are encouraging sole operator practices.
That's the issue, yeah.
And they're paying an absolute premium for it, based on what I can see.
Yeah.
But they're in groups that are marketing a narrative that says don't build someone else's brand.
Yeah.
Now, if I want to build a real estate business, there's no way I'm going into business with a franchisor, if that's what you want to call them, that's actually telling me that it's no good working for someone else.
Yeah.
Because that's effectively what they're saying. They're saying, don't build someone else's brand. Okay, well, if I join your business and I want to build a business,
then what are you doing?
What about the second, third, fourth agent that I wanted to join my business?
Correct.
What's going to happen to them?
Yeah.
Not to mention that if I'm paying you and then I've got to pay them, the margin's not there.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good real estate practice model to an extent. If you want to be a lone wolf operator and do your own thing, there's a place for it. It's working, obviously. Good luck to them. But then there's the real estate business part. And I'd say anyone who wants to open a real estate business, hey, come and chat to us, because I tell you what's interesting. We were talking to Phil Harris recently, and great operator, and we're seeing in our market, as he's seeing in his market, we're seeing the bigger real estate businesses, say the top 3 on the Gold Coast, 2 independents and us, are actually growing market share.
Well, that's over the last 12 months. It's a definite trend, isn't it? You can see it.
Because we're seeing, I had a call yesterday from a single operator, husband and wife, smaller rent roll. They just don't want to do it anymore.
But I think it's getting harder. Like,
it is.
The margins to operate and actually do it on a smaller scale are getting tougher.
And
that's the other thing. Like, if you're wanting to do it and you're going to go and, put yourself at home in a work from home environment. I mean, we all saw what happened during COVID. And I think, we learn a lot about being able to have flexibility to work and do different things. But also, I think it's so hard to actually operate at a decent level on your own all the time.
But I'd say to you, if you want to, I think the first step you've got to make is, am I running a real estate practice?
Yeah.
And if you're running a practice, you can do that we've got people within our business now that have 4, 5, 6 people in their team that are running businesses that would literally win smaller franchise group office awards.
Absolutely.
So we've got mega teams, or when I say mega teams, mega GCI, efficiently run. And I think you can do that within a big brand business.
Well,
100%.
I think most of, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say most of, if you looked at probably the top 10 agents around the country, most of them, if not all of them, would be associated with a brand outside, or a bigger brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not here to push that.
No,
that's just an observation.
Yeah,
and I'd be interested to ask them why.
Yeah,
because as I said, the marketing would have you believe that someone is benefiting from you building, in inverted commas, someone else's brand.
Yeah.
The business part, I was saying before, the trend I think that we're seeing is already happening. I think this is something that we're aware of, opportunities. Someone who wants to run a business, wants to build a business, doesn't want to do it on their own.
Yeah.
Partners with someone like us, who's got an amazing back end. Partners with someone like Phil.
Yep.
Place do a great job at it as well in Brisbane. I know Matt and Hazley do a great job at it, with partnering with people.
Yep.
So you've got businesses that have the infrastructure, can give the leadership.
Yeah.
You don't have to recruit. You don't have to do all the HR.
No.
You can plug in, be a great salesperson,
great at doing.
And still be a tribal elder in the business. Still have sprinkle culture and be part of something.
Yeah.
I think that's got huge legs already happening, and I think that's a big part of our future. Franchise groups, I think, at the beginning of someone's journey, say I'm a great salesperson that wants to start, I think that can be very helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think the support you're getting.
But look at your own journey. I mean,
Absolutely.
when you started Harcourts Coastal, the first time you went away on some of those trips with the Harcourts guys, I mean, that was, I don't know about mind-blowing, but it changed your perspective,
it was
for sure.
Hugely beneficial. And those of you that may not be aware, Harcourts internationally, particularly New Zealand, I mean, I'm going to say that New Zealand Harcourts has the best real estate businesses in Australasia, both countries.
Yeah.
You got Martin Cooper, you've got obviously you've got Polly,
Gold.
and even Megan, shout out to Megan Jaffe, Ray White, who runs an amazing business. So New Zealand has some amazing businesses. I remember when I first went to the SJC, which is a top 5, weekend in Harcourts. I was just blown away by some of the numbers being spoken about.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is their focus on recruitment, their focus on culture. I remember going to Lynette and John McFadden's office, and their marketing department had this origami. It was like an origami invitation shaped like a shoe.
Yeah.
And I said, "What's that for?" And she said, "That's our invitation to a Melbourne Cup function."
Amazing.
I said, "Wow, is that like a client thing?" No, that's for our team.
Yeah.
Think about that. That's someone who understands that the agent is the client.
Yeah.
Phenomenal business. So that's, getting back to that agent as a client, getting back to that shape of the industry.
Yeah.
Agent is the client.
Yeah.
That
No
to me,
doubt.
if I was to give you one mantra for the new age, the agent is the client.
Yeah.
So
and if you don't have that mindset and you're trying to run a real estate business, then you've missed it.
I think you have missed it. And I think this idea of we've got this amazing brand, working for us is a privilege. The hierarchy's here, we're here. You're lucky to be here.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah.
That was there 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That was there 15 years. It's gone.
Yep.
Now, top of the apex agent.
Yep.
Align with a business, a company that can give you support to help grow your business and your aspirations. The other thing that I want to touch on, Rob, which we get a bit, is, and this is interesting, big business versus small business.
Yeah.
I remember when we were small, I used to bash big businesses too. And I used to say, hey, don't work there, you'll get lost.
Yeah.
And I actually, to be honest, I actually had this real stumbling block and mooring line, if you like, of, I don't want to be too big. This is like 2012.
Yeah.
Because I think I'll lose connection with our team. I didn't want to do that. What changed it for me is I went to a Harcourts awards night in Wellington, and I sat at Martin Cooper's table. There would have been 200 people in his business.
Part of his business, yeah.
He knew every single person by name.
Yeah.
He went round every table. And I asked his staff, I said, what's it like working with Marty? What's it like working with Harcourts Cooper & Co? Is it a big business? And all of them went, oh, no, it's great. Yeah. We see Marty all the time. He's connected. He calls us. We celebrate. Like, it's a really great, really great culture.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, okay, if he can do it, because all I had to judge on was people in Australia. And I hadn't seen anyone do it that well on a big scale.
I mean, you look at Marty and what he's done, he would have been at the point where his only focus, I'd imagine at that point, was dealing with his agents and being support and looking out for them.
That's right. That's all he does.
When you're smaller, it's probably harder to do that because you've got to wear more hats.
And I used to say things like, oh, we don't want to be big.
Yeah.
You know, we did. Of course we did. I challenge anyone that says they don't want to be bigger than they are now. I mean, not everyone wants 120 agents like we have, but you know, not everyone is going to. All I'm saying is, you sell what your strength is at the time.
Yeah, correct.
What's interesting now is we do get it a bit.
Yeah.
We're out there recruiting. We're out there talking to agents, and some people are attracted to that because it's strength, and they instantly see the connection between, okay, big business, big resources, great support. Some people don't. Some people are a bit fearful of that, and I understand it. But what I find interesting is this: a business is only big because they've got a model that works.
Yeah, correct.
It's like a restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, if it's the old analogy. If I go to a restaurant and I see a queue out the front, people absolutely waiting to get in,
they're doing something well.
Yeah. If I see the one next door, there's a few people there. You don't go, oh, this is a boutique restaurant.
Yeah. They're obviously doing a great job for the client. Yeah.
The first thing I'm thinking is, how long's that chicken been in the fridge?
Yeah.
You know? That's what I think.
And then you worry about that.
I do. I'm a psycho.
Salmon's your worst.
Oh, yeah, I do. And you know what's interesting? Yeah. We go to that Madison's every morning, and it's. I know it's fresh because it's
turning over.
And I'd apply the same thing. If you look at a business and it's big and it's retained people, if it's grown and it's retained, it's doing something right.
Yeah.
If it's grown and lost and lost and lost, it's doing something wrong.
Yeah.
If something stayed the same size, it's rarely by choice.
Yeah, correct.
It's because people have come.
Well, you're not really wanting to. Yeah, I don't know many that are, as you say, wanting to just stay where they are.
And I think people are quite shocked how available we can be as well. And you know what? We don't want to get into a recruiting diatribe. Just by natural instinct, we're going to go down.
Well, I think we're passionate about it.
But we're stopping ourselves, so let's not do it.
Yeah,
Robbie, can I ask you a question as we wrap up?
Yeah.
What is the one piece of practical advice, right, that you've ever been given, whether it's self-help, whether it's real estate, anything that you've actually ever heard? Because I want to leave our listeners for our very first episode with something to take home.
Yep.
What is one thing that comes to mind, big or small, earth-shattering or not, that you actually think? Because the reason I ask this is because you go to a session, you go to ARIC, you go to a conference, you have a speaker in. What do you actually implement and take home? What tool do you take home from that? What comes to mind for you?
I don't know if it's a tool, but it's something that I remember hearing early days of getting in the industry, and it's always stuck with me. And it's people don't know, or people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And I really do believe that, particularly at the moment, like if you're wanting to do a great job and build a great career, because I think it's easy to come into the industry and think, you know, I'm just going to burn through numbers, burn through calls, get through this, build this business, and I'm doing whatever I can to get there. But then on the other side of that, you've got the people that are just taking their time through actually building real relationships and doing the right thing by people and genuinely trying to help. Because I think it's so obvious if you're trying to actually help someone or not. And to me, I think I've always tried to have that approach with what I've done, but you've actually got to genuinely care about what you're doing, because if you don't, it's so easy to see through. and then it's just disingenuine. You just don't. It doesn't work or doesn't have the same impact. So to me, I don't know if that's a tip to.
Oh no,
take,
that is because that can change behaviour. If you go around with that advice top of mind, I think it is going to change the way, because what happens, the tendency is for you to just go in and demonstrate how much you know and prove knowledge. Salespeople are notorious for that, instead of actually listening, asking questions, and showing genuine concern.
And I'm going to say one more before I give it over to you to answer the question. And this is just because it's top of mind, because I heard Ben Crow, and I mentioned this morning, but one of the things that he said recently when I heard, and I thought it's just such a good way it just changes your outlook on everything. So if you've got something that you've got to do, and you sort of put into this and I've got to go and do this today, change the perspective to I'm able to do it. I've got the opportunity to do this. And if you kind of look at it that everything you're doing or going to is a privilege, and you've got the opportunity and you're lucky to be there and do it, it just to me that's a great little check. If you sort of got something you think is mundane or you're going towards, actually just turn it around. There's a lot of people that would love to be in the position that you are.
I get to do this podcast.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that was awesome. How about you, Dano?
That's a good perspective. Well, for me, the one that I think has actually had the biggest impact on me would be the Mel Robbins 5-second rule.
Yeah,
which is this idea that when you have an intuition or an impulse, a good impulse, or an idea that comes to you that you know you should do that would be good for you, going for a run, making a call to a vendor, ringing your mum and dad to say hello. It doesn't have to be business productive.
No.
If you get that thought, you've basically got 5 seconds. And you can almost count back 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you don't act on it, it's most likely not going to happen. And I think that is just understanding that that's normal. Because so many of us have these ideas, I'm going to do that. It comes into mind. And then what happens, of course, is that you don't feel like it. And Mel Robbins talks about understanding mastery is about you're never going to feel like it.
Well, it's like the old thing, isn't it? If you're going to go for a run, put your shoes next to your bed. If you get out, you put them on, you're like, well, geez, I've got to go now.
And showing up. The running shoes, runners that understand, once your shoes are on, you're out the door. But it's like that mental hurdle, or you're thinking about the run. Hey, don't think about the run.
Just go.
Just put the shoes on. That's true. And I think it's one of those things that I think feeling like doing something and waiting to feel like doing something is probably the biggest motivation myth. It's a myth. You don't. It's this idea that people out there doing the work, whether it's grinding in the gym or whether it's making 100 calls a day or whatever.
Must be so motivated.
They must feel like it. And it's okay for them but it's not that at all. The idea that motivation does not precede action. It actually follows action.
It's so true.
And that's Phil Jauncey. Dr. Phil Jauncey. You've got to start something to actually get that feeling. And our industry's rife with that. It's something that if we get right, and start small. You don't have to start in some major development of I'm going to prospect for an hour. That's why I love Dan McVeigh's advice. 10 people. The compounding effect of 10 people over 50 weeks.
Treat them with care, go in with genuine help.
It's 500 people. And it's huge.
It is.
Rob, our first session. How did we go?
Well, I don't know. What was the first one? Will be bad. Hopefully we're okay. We'll go with that.
We'll go with a pass. And look, the next episodes we are going to have guests in. Not necessarily always real estate related, but this podcast is unashamedly for the real estate community.
Absolutely.
The real deal. We hope that you strap yourself in and enjoy, whether you're driving along or whether you're enjoying a beverage,
whatever it is,
on a Friday night.
That's ambitious, I reckon.
We feel sorry for you if you are.
Have a drink and listen
to us. We're right there with you. And by the way, if you have any ideas for guests or what's on your mind, we don't expect everyone to agree with us, but we are committed to telling our truth. I love that. It's my truth. We're committed to telling our truth because I think the real estate industry needs more voices of people who are out there actually doing it. And we think we're very proud of what we do, but we also recognise that there's plenty of different people out there that
are doing it well also.
They're doing it well, but they also need to be brought into the light because they're actually great human beings, but they're not going to scream and shout from the rooftops. Rob, signing off.
Thanks, Dano.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.